Less than a week remains in the NHL regular season before arguably one of the best postseasons in all of sport. That is the Stanley Cup playoffs. So to get you set for those final few spots in the Stanley Cup postseason and what you need to know down this final week of the regular season, NHL's Pete Jensen joins us live right here on this Friday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Pete, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here on the Early Line.
Anytime, guys. Love joining you and love the stretch run of the NHL season where it still feels like a bunch of teams are still alive in the Eastern Conference for those final two spots. But obviously teams like the Islanders and the Penguins have caught everybody by surprise and appear to be running away with this thing. Still pretty close, though, with a couple days to go.
Both teams winning in overtime thrillers on home ice last night. The Isles have the third and final spot of the playoff bids from the Metropolitan Division. At this moment, Pittsburgh holds on to the second and final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference standings. We'll look at what all this means in just a moment. But, Pete, we start with the game last night in Pittsburgh. The Pens gave up 2 goals to the Red Wings in that third and final period to see the extra session. But Erik Karlsson delivers the game winner for Pittsburgh in OT. The Pens win on home ice, a -156 home money line favorite, 6-5 over Detroit. How significant of a victory was this for the Penguins last night?
Oh, it was insane, and that's why they went out and got Erik Karlsson in the offseason. He's been underwhelming this season, about a 50-point drop-off compared to last year when he won the Norris. But when you have vintage EK65 like that on the ice in overtime, not to mention guys like Crosby, who assisted on that goal, and a milestone for him with 1,000 career assists. I mean, still one of the top 5-10 players in the NHL, even at his age, plus Malkin and Letang, and you still got the band together here. The crazy thing, though, when you look at the tail of the tape for the Penguins this year, is that they sold Jake Gensel, who was in his contract year. That's Crosby's longtime trusted line mate. They traded him in the conference to the Hurricanes, and they might match up with Carolina in the first round, but nobody at that particular moment, including myself, would have ever dreamt that Pittsburgh would be in a playoff spot after about a 10-point deficit just about a month ago. It's insane.
Playing their best hockey at the end of the season. That's certainly what Pittsburgh is doing here. If we do take a look at that wild card race, you take a look at the Tampa Bay Lightning in that top spot there, then followed by the Penguins, Capitals, Wings, and Flyers. 86 points for the Penguins. The next 3 teams below them all tied at 85. Now, myself here, Pete, as a Flyers fan, the dreaded 3-point game happened yesterday, which was an overtime victory for Pittsburgh going up against Detroit. But if we're looking at that final spot here, is it the Penguins to grasp, or can one of those other teams, in your opinion, claim that final wild card spot here?
I'm not a believer in Washington. They don't have good underlying metrics. I don't know how they're still around. Spencer Carberry deserves a ton of praise for that. Obviously, it's an older team and stuff like that with Ovechkin and Oshie and stuff like that, John Carlson. They're hanging around. Philly is ahead of schedule. I'm still high on that team long term, but only 1 win in their past 9 or 10 games isn't cutting it. I will say Detroit is ahead of schedule as well and has a younger core, plus the addition of Patrick Kane this season. So if anybody's going to steal it from Pittsburgh, it could still be Detroit. You saw them come back from a multi-goal deficit in the game against Pittsburgh to earn a point, and that was a key, crucial point with a couple games to go. One bad game, one blunder could really tilt the scale for or against Pittsburgh. So Detroit's doing a nice job hanging around.
That's how impactful last night's result was in Pittsburgh in OT. The Pens with a point lead over 4 or 3 teams that are behind them. It is going to be a great final week of this NHL regular season that will feel like Stanley Cup playoff action. Now from the teams to the individual races, Pete, we look at that Hart Trophy for the MVP award virtually in the National Hockey League. Colorado's Nathan MacKinnon, a pretty hefty favorite at this moment, -480. Nikita Kucherov from Tampa, +470. The odds would say, Pete, that MacKinnon has already won the Hart, but do you think this race is still up in the air?
It is. It's going to be interesting to see if the Art Ross Trophy, the scoring title, correlates with the winner of the Hart Trophy. I don't know that it necessarily will, because Kucherov's starting to run away with that trophy for the scoring title, and he has done an impeccable job this season. Tampa Bay has missed key players all season because of injuries, whether Vasilevsky earlier in the year and Sergachev for the past couple of months. And he is just head and shoulders above anybody else on that team, and having one of the great seasons of the past 30 years very quietly. But a lot of that production comes on the power play. So people lean toward Nathan MacKinnon, who leads the NHL in even strength points and has shattered his previous career high. So it's going to be a barn burner the last couple of games.
Barn burner as well here in the President's Trophy race to claim the top status here in the NHL in the regular season. You got 4 teams within 3 points of each other. The Rangers at 110 points, the Stars at 109, the Hurricanes at 107, and the Bruins at 107. The Rangers last night took on a Philadelphia Flyers team leaking oil and got waxed at home in the Garden. Is it the Rangers? Is it the Stars, Hurricanes, Bruins, or somebody else that you believe can claim that top spot here, Pete?
I mean, Dallas is really good. Carolina is really good. Those are the 2 deepest teams in the NHL, in my opinion. And with how good Freddie Anderson has been since coming back from the blood clotting issue, I just love what he brings to that team. In addition to Gensel and Kuznetsov, who they traded for at the deadline. It's interesting, though, because there is that kind of President's Trophy curse the past decade or so in the NHL. So you really wonder, like, do these teams really want it? I think they probably do, especially if it's going to mean playing, let's say, in the East, a team like Detroit in the first round, or Philly, which would really be a lopsided matchup on paper. So I do not think, though, that the Rangers would want to play the Islanders in the first round, and that could certainly happen. Whether they fall into the 2-3 hole and the Islanders get the third in the Metro, or if the Rangers win the President's Trophy and Pittsburgh passes New York. Pittsburgh plays New York Islanders last game of the season, so that could determine the matchups right there if they both get in.
The 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, the last President's Trophy winner for the best regular season record to also win Lord Stanley's Cup. Now, when you think about that, 10 years without the best regular season team winning the Stanley Cup, it's a very defining curse at this moment. And only one of the past 10 winners of the President's Trophy has even seen the conference finals in the Stanley Cup postseason. So let's look at those Stanley Cup odds, Pete, now that the postseason picture is starting to take a bit of a deeper shape at this moment. As you look across the league in this final week, where might some value be to win that Stanley Cup this year?
I think you have to consider, just with the recent track record, I think 4 of the past 5 years have seen a surprise team make the Stanley Cup final. I mean, can go back to 2019 when the Blues went all the way. Nobody saw it coming. Vegas last year was a bit of a surprise how they limped into the playoffs and then, hit their stride getting Mark Stone back. So I think you look at some of the hottest teams in the league right now, certainly the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have a proven pedigree in going deep in the playoffs with the Kucherovs and the Hedmans and Stamkos being in a contract situation moving forward. I mean, he's got a lot to play for. I like the way Tampa's playing since March 1st, one of the best teams in the league. And then also Nashville out west. If Nashville plays anybody, any of those top seeds, whether it's, Dallas or Vancouver or something like that, like nobody's going to want to play Nashville. They have elite players as well with Roman Josi, UC Saros, and Philip Forsberg at every position. They've made shrewd moves all season long. Andrew Brunette should be one of the top Coach of the Year candidates or finalists, in my opinion. And Nashville had that 18-game point streak just a few weeks ago, so they're locked and loaded here.
Yeah. 5 games on the ice tonight in the NHL and playoff ramifications. The Blues looking up at the Golden Knights, trying to catch Vegas for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Going to be a great Friday night in the National Hockey League. And it's always a great Friday when Pete Jensen joins us here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Pete, thank you so much. More on the Early Line comes your way next.